Welcome to the Onside Podcast, a podcast on innovation-driven entrepreneurship. Join us on this journey as we amplify the power of disruptive ideas. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Onside Podcast. This season, as you know, we're taking a deeper dive into women's entrepreneurship here in Canada, and we're highlighting amazing women entrepreneurs and leaders who are working to make our ecosystem more inclusive and driving real change. These fireside chats are being brought to you as part of the Onside Start Now Incubator Project, which supports diverse and intersectional women to start and grow their businesses all across Canada. I'm your host, Alex McCann, and we're so happy that you're joining us this season. And for this episode, today we're going to be speaking with the amazing Chantal Brine, who is a CEO and founder of EnPoint. Originally from Bermuda, Chantal made Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada her number 2 home after graduating from St. Mary's University. In 2018, after reconnecting with her passion for helping others to find careers that they love, she started a journey that would become EnPoint. Now she leads a team committed to helping organizations leveraging mentorship as a tool to support their careers and their development. Working with post-secondary educational institutions and not-for-profits, Chantal is on a mission to help 1 million people lead fulfilling careers. Outside of her work, she also does a lot of great things and supports a number of groups with similar passions for helping people to be their best selves, including Women in Communications and Technology Canada, the Halifax Partnership, Unity Charity, and Techsploration, to name a few things. So, Chantal, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex, for having me.
I'm really excited that you're here. We got a chance to meet probably in person over a year ago. It's kind of like the COVID brain still is kind of like working there for me a little bit. But so I'm so glad that we're able to meet in person during this month, which is a very exciting month for us, which is National Mentoring Month. And Chantal, you're originally from Bermuda, which it's winter here. So I'm only daydreaming about like the sunshine and the warmth. What led you here to Canada, in Atlantic Canada?
Yeah, it wasn't the weather. The irony, Alex. And thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and talk all things mentorship, and we'll get into that. But I was talking to my family back home this morning, and they're talking about Bermuda winters, and it's cold. And I'm sitting there looking out my window and like it's snow. Like, guys, come on.
Yeah, it was -8 the other day. Like, yeah. They're probably like, it's +8. I can't believe it.
It's a thing, right? It's all relative. Absolutely fair enough, right? But we won't do the Atlantic Canadian thing and just talk about the weather. I originally came to Nova Scotia to go to school. So you mentioned St. Mary's there in my bio. Really, really thankful for my opportunity to go to SMU. Met some amazing professors. Had an opportunity to participate in co-op, which didn't even know what that was when I came here. And that is what, was the start of many, pieces coming together in terms of actually me living here and having Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada. And it is home number 2, right? Not 1 and 2, but they're both my homes. And I feel very lucky that I get to have that. Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada has been a place of opportunity for me. I feel very, very thankful for being able to do what I do. I love what I do, and that doesn't mean there aren't hard days. That every other entrepreneur out there knows that, right? Despite even entrepreneurship and all of our careers, there are ups and downs, but I'm very thankful for the opportunity that I get to wake up, do work that I care about, work with an amazing team, work with amazing clients across the country. And I don't know that I would have been able to do that if I, had stayed home. Back home, it's insurance, reinsurance, accounting, and finance. And I am none of those things, Alex. Like, I'm people, I'm relationship, I'm story. And so I'm very, very thankful for the opportunities that coming here for university opened doors that I didn't plan for them to open. So I didn't plan to stay here after graduation. It was co-op. Right. I got to work with the Public Service Commission at the time, then got to work with a small consulting firm and got to see what that was like and just got exposed to different opportunity, different people. I was like, well, there's some really cool things happening here. Absolutely. Nova Scotia, water is a part of it for me. I'm an island girl still at heart.
Maritime, boats, water.
Right.
I'm a Pisces, so I definitely can appreciate that.
There you go.
I have to be near the water. I just have to. Yeah.
Same, right? But very thankful. If anybody ever wants to talk about Bermuda, by the way, I am all for it. They have a direct flight now. It's very economical. Just saying.
Yeah.
So, but very, very happy to be here and to do the work that we do. And a big part of that actually is working with international students, with a number of organizations. As a former international student myself, who made Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada home, and have been welcomed here, have found opportunity here that, again, it would have been different had I gone back. So it's a very cool part of my journey that I get to bring that with me in the work that we do every day.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. So you made the transition to Nova Scotia. If you'd stayed in Bermuda, maybe you'd be doing finance, accounting, all those fun things, which we all need. We need these things.
100%.
We need these things. And I'm sure that people who are down in Bermuda doing these things, they're still people. They're like people persons or whatever, but a little different, a little different vibe here for sure.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting you talk about co-op. At Onsite, we've had a number of co-ops. One of our co-ops just left us, Megan. She really helped us with our podcast and our marketing and all that kind of stuff. She's at Acadia. But was it being in co-op that got you interested in mentorship? Is that the thing that kind of sparked the interest for you around mentorship, or like how did that kind of happen?
Great question. And no,
absolutely not.
I was too young. And I was one of those folks, Alex, who came to university because it's the thing to do, right? Bermuda has a college if you want to do, a bigger degree, and then also just go experience something different. You need to leave, right? And then you can come back. But I knew I needed to go away. I was like, okay, I don't know what I want to do. I like people. Let's take psychology. I want to help them. We'll figure it out along the way. Right? I was one of those people. And co-op came about because an advisor from one of my classes was seeing my interest in the intersection of people at work. And so organizational psychology.
Okay.
Right. And so that was really the bridge to then, and I know now that, and I can look back and go, that professor absolutely was mentoring me. Did I know it at the time? No.
He was using Jedi mind tricks to like help you navigate.
100%. And she was phenomenal. I then became a TA with her. So got lots of exposure and opportunity. But fundamentally what got me into mentorship as a practice, as an art, as a philosophy, was an experience later on in life. I was working at a company they were based in Nova Scotia, but working right across North America. They had technology, software, and I was in I was the human resources department, right? Like I was the one. And then, we had a couple people over time, but I started with that organization when they were 32 people, grew it to about 600 or so with temporary staffing, and then kind of scaled back down on the other side. And it was at that time the company was going through a reimagining, right? Which happens in normal company life cycle. And this individual came into the organization who just took an interest, Alex, asked questions I had never thought about before, actually sat and like in the uncomfortable silences in those questions and actually cared about what I said, but not in a way that my answer mattered, meaning it was either going to be good or bad, but more so that I was willing to think about that was what mattered. And that was at the time, what I really realized as mentorship. And again, I can now look back on many other inflection points in my career and go, I've had amazing mentors from different walks for different things, right? Different seasons for different, for different mentors. But it was really that relationship that then led to my awakening of, it's not really human resources that I want to do.
Yeah.
That's not it. I'm great at it, right? I'm really good at certain parts of it. Other parts of it, I probably sucked at, right? It just wasn't me. It wasn't what I was passionate about. I wasn't fueled by it. And so it was that relationship with this person that went for, I want to say probably a 2-year period of time in the trenches, so to speak, was working with them through in my day-to-day job, but they were giving me access to their network, introducing me to different people to have different kinds of conversations that I began exploring. What do I actually want to do? Right. And so that was the aha moment for me that started down the train. It would take still some time to get to what is now on point, but that was the kind of genesis really of, oh, wow, you know what? Our lives are really too short. None of us know how much time we have on this earth. What if we could actually do work that we connected to? How happier would we be? How much more satisfied would we be? And man, actually, how much would that benefit the work we're doing, and then the people we serve, and the communities, the employees? And there's actually research that proves and shows that, but in practice, it's a little harder, right? And so having that experience of having somebody walk with me, not in front, but with me through that was the eye-opening of, okay, you know what? We don't have to figure career out on our own. We can learn from and with other people, and everybody wins if we can do that. So that was the aha and the very real personal, oh my gosh, life could be really different. What if?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that you had such a profound sort of experience and realization. And I think you're probably right. People sometimes have mentors or mentorship relationships that can be informal, maybe not, super formal. Like I didn't sign up for a program or, things like that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. You talk about walking along together and not in front, not behind.
Yeah.
Because you have to kind of be ready for it, and it is like a journey.
100%.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. But why do you think mentorship is important for women? And we at Onside we're talk about entrepreneurship. Why do you think it's important for women or women entrepreneurs to think about mentorship?
Yeah, and I think I can answer from a couple different perspectives. One, I would have never started the company that I did when I did had it not have been for this relationship. Entrepreneurship wasn't in the curriculum when I was a student at St. Mary's. Thankfully, it is now, and they're doing so much amazing work. There's organizations like yours that's doing amazing work in that space of even just introducing entrepreneurship to people. But that just wasn't a thing at that time. And so for me, it was the start of being able to go, okay, you know what? I can do something I care about. I do have ideas. I'm really good at certain things. And if I'm willing to push myself in outside of comfort zones, play to my strengths, talk to more of those right people, galvanize, and actually just find the thing, so to speak, right? Which is always the hard part, I think, of starting a business. But we'll talk about that later on. But that's part of it in terms of, for me, it was the confidence. So like when I talk about mentorship, I talk about the underneath, so the kind of below the iceberg stuff, which is the hardest. That's our self-talk, right? That's all the things that we have grown up hearing. Some of it we've let in, some subconsciously. It's both our positive and our negative views of ourselves. It is the things that get in the way of us taking the steps that maybe we really, really want to do, right? And so for me, that is the first biggest benefit of having a mentor, particularly if you're going to go down the road of entrepreneurship. Like there's no path for this. My mentor would talk about, you're in the forest and you got a machete, right? And maybe you got a machete, maybe you don't, maybe you're using your hands to start, right? And you're creating the path. And sometimes that's going to be a little harder than others, right? And so you've got to be willing to take that first step and know that you are going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. It's going to get ugly, but you're going to dust yourself off and you're going to be okay. The world's not going to end. Right. And to keep coming back to like why you're doing it. It's a certain kind of crazy.
Yes, that's true. A certain kind.
Right.
A good crazy.
It is. But for me, that's hard to show someone else unless you have seen somebody before they engaged in that mentoring relationship and you see them and you hear them talk throughout it. Then you can tell the difference. But from an outside looking in, that's the harder one to sell sometimes. And it's not you snap your fingers and that's it.
Yeah.
Right? It is that journey. It does take time. You're talking about building trust, right? And we all move differently when it comes to that. But for me, and what I've noticed in working with organizations, like the Forum, like Women in Communications Technology, like Techsploration, the Dow is a computer science, We Are All CS program. We're working with a financial company, their women's employee resource group. There are nuances when it comes to women's journeys in career and women's journeys in entrepreneurship, that when you can actually just say it and have somebody who maybe they've been with it or they've gone through that similar, right? And just be able to, you just normalize it. And not in a way that accepts, that's not what I'm talking about, but in a way that helps you to figure out, okay, how am I going to move through this with integrity, with a way that I'm going to feel good about this? And having that as a safe sounding board, that mentorship relationship, Alex, this isn't somebody who, in my view, the best mentors, particularly when you're thinking about an entrepreneurship journey, they can come from many angles, right? You can have many. But the one I'm talking about here, somebody who doesn't have a vested interest in my success, other than they see the success. They've seen it in others. They've helped others get there. They've helped themselves get there. And all they want is for me to have what I want of success. They don't have a definition of it. Entrepreneurship, that can get tricky, right? So an investor, it's a different relationship. Doesn't mean they cannot mentor, right? And do some of the practices of mentoring, but there's a bias there. 100% it makes sense, right? A partner, there's a bias there. Again, makes sense. So I would encourage, everybody, surround yourself with different kinds of mentors. And if you can only find one, find somebody who can be truly objective. And that can take time, but I think that's where organizations and like the work that Onsite is doing, the Forum is doing, there are spaces, Women in Communications Technology, like there are spaces that you can put yourself in to connect with people who you don't yet know, who you can take a chance and see if there's an opportunity to build a relationship there, because that person they owe nothing to you, right? So if it forms and you're able to get to that place of trust, that unbiased feedback is so helpful, right? So again, absolutely different types of mentorship, different mentors for different things. But I fundamentally think as female entrepreneurs, we need a cheering squad. And not just the people who are going to say like, not the rose-colored glasses kind.
Not the like, oh, everything you do is amazing.
Right.
That was actually crap. You need to do better.
Right.
But in a nice way.
In a way that it actually goes, okay, I'm not going to do that again. There was this time early on in one of my mentoring relationships, that one of the most pivotal for me, where this individual also had access within the company that we were both in at the time. So there was a bit of actually some sponsorship happening as well, which for female entrepreneurs, harder, right? Like you can't, but you can look at it through the lens of maybe having an investor act more as a sponsor. So opening doors to funding, opening doors to resources, to networks. But in this case, this individual was trying to give me different opportunities to show different skills of mine within the company. And we were having a town hall. Okay, the company was going through some change. And we were probably, I want to say 70 employees in an office at this point. So kind of crammed. We didn't really have a space that was big enough. So we're in our foyer. And I've got all these people looking at me, most of whom, by the way, I helped hire in some way, shape, or form. And I was giving an update, I think, on an office move or something like that, because I was working on that. And I stayed in my chair when I gave the update.
Oh,
yeah. He never let me forget it.
Oh,
But like I can smile about it now. I joke about it now because I'm like, okay, yeah, right. No, that's not the thing to have done.
Yeah.
In terms of I'm trying to communicate change to people, and what does that mean? And that, again, confidence, Alex, right? But it was a mistake. Was it a big mistake? No, but it was a learning opportunity, right? So that's a great example, though, of you need those real conversations, and sometimes it's harder conversations.
Yeah,
it should be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was just listening through all the things you were just saying, and when you started off in the beginning with the machete and the whatever, I just had this like image in my mind of being like in a jungle, the entrepreneurship jungle, and you've got like a machete or like some kind of small thing and trying to whack your way through to get to the gold at the other end. And it's definitely much more helpful if you have people, along the way trying to, encourage you, guide you, be that kind of sounding board. So, yeah, yeah. Well, you talked a little bit about different kinds of mentorship, and I also mentioned kind of like formal and informal, and those kinds of things. Are there different kinds of mentorship? Like, what are the different kinds of mentorship, or what have you seen?
Yeah, and absolutely. One of the things we say when we work with organizations, particularly if we're going to do helping them create a mentorship program. So mentorship program design is part of what we do. And we start with saying mentorship is not a one size fits all, right? It's not going to be the same thing in every single circumstance. You've got different people. You've got different objectives you're trying to help those people work towards. So we spend a lot of time when we're working with organizations, and or even if I'm just talking to somebody who's trying to access mentorship, understand your why. What is it you want to be different as a result of either convening and putting people together to form a relationship, and or if you want or you're going out to seek mentorship, why? What do you want to be different? What does success look like for you? Right. And not just the surface level things. How will you know it was a good use of your time? And once you can actually understand what that is, that then opens up worlds in terms of, okay, what's the right kind of mentorship for me? Who's the right mentor? What's the right kind of structure for my mentorship program if I'm an organization that's going to create a program, right? And I gave an example. I've participated in both formal and informal, but most of my experiences have actually been informal. They were created because of an opportunity where I was already connecting with somebody, whether it was through work or volunteer work, or, hey, Chantal, you should meet somebody, right? And you're like, oh, actually, yes, I should. I like them. I like you. I trust you, and let's go see. And then you start from there, right? But I've also participated in formal programs that have a beginning and an end. And they've got some kind of, it depends, right? Some programs are pretty structured in terms of, okay, we want you to meet 4 times in 6 months. What you do after that, up to you. In some cases, you might even find programs that provide like a meeting agenda or a framework. What we see most often is organizations can be really, really successful if they're going to create programming, provide some sense like of where people can start. We did some work with an organization last year out in Alberta who's working in the zero carbon space. And they've got a mentorship program, a lot of individuals going through it, and individuals from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, but brand new to that field, right? So it's transition. I'm not confident in this new thing because I've never done this new thing. And what we talked about with them is, you've got the right ingredients in terms of willing participants who want to engage in mentorship, but they're already lacking confidence in the thing the mentorship is intending to help them build context and knowledge around in terms of career paths within this industry. Take some of the guesswork out for them. Don't make them have to figure out, how do I even engage with mentorship to do this other thing? Providing a little bit of structure. And you see me do this with my shoulders because some organizations hate that word.
Oh,
right?
Structure.
Oh, so we talk about I think of it like when you're bowling, right? You used to have the guardrails.
Yeah.
Guardrails, right? Just something that's going to help those 2 people or that triad or the group really organize. Okay, we've agreed this is what success looks like. And we've agreed here's how we're going to work together. And at least something to get them started in those conversations. What we found is that even if that is the case and individuals have access to, maybe if they want some training or if they just want to brush up on, okay, how do I ask that question that I really want to ask? Like that's often what we hear, Alex, when we're working with participants. It's either how do I find a mentor, right? Which is where the informal comes in, or go find programs that are out there. Female entrepreneurs, we've listed a couple already today.
Yeah. There's a lot out there that the forum is one we've worked with in the past, and lots of other ones out there. Yeah, well, it's I definitely feel like in Nova Scotia, my experience with the informal mentorship definitely involves coffee. A lot of coffee chats, a lot of recommendations over coffee. So if anyone is super intimidated and wants to try coffee, like I find, at least if you're in Nova Scotia.
I was going to mention, Alex, that point, LinkedIn.
Yeah, sure. 100%. Yeah.
Right. Like the pandemic did a wonder of opening up networks, right? Like we did a bunch of other things as well. But in terms of access, it did open doors that maybe weren't open before. And so, if you're someone who's looking for mentorship and you haven't found a formal program or organization that's helping to convene those, LinkedIn's a really great place, right? Your job then is to find the right person based on what information you can find about their profile. There has to be an actual connection. It's not transaction. This is relationship, right? But using LinkedIn to reach out and say, look, I find your career journey really fascinating because blah, 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 blah. Look, I know you're probably extremely busy. I'm wondering if I could have 20 minutes of your time just to ask you a couple questions about blah, 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 blah. And it's a start, right? It's an olive branch, so to speak. And I think individuals will be surprised how many times. Doesn't mean you, by the way, if you do it like once, somebody responds right away. It might take you 3 times, 4 times. But if it's somebody you really want to build a relationship with, you're going to be persistent, right? Politely persistent.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised how often that could start conversations that could lead to real transformative relationships. But you never know if you don't take that first step.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Reach out. Don't be a stalker.
Politely persistent.
Politely persistent. Exactly. So we've talked a lot about, it's National Mentoring Month. And we talked a little bit about different kinds of mentorship, what got you kind of interested in mentorship. How did you decide to create a company that focuses on mentorship? Because it's funny, I think we met like a year ago or more. I think I was at a women's entrepreneurship event.
Yep.
And I kind of knew this and then I sort of forgot. And then we were looking at some stuff, related to mentorship, because we have found at Onside, like the mentorship space and we work with a lot of early stage women entrepreneurs who, they're a little bit early in their career. And a lot of times people are nervous or haven't thought about, what mentorship could do for them, or if it's viable or doesn't make any sense. So we found that space, kind of difficult. So I was like, oh yes, EnPoint, this is amazing. But how did you how did you decide to create a business? Like, was this something that you did like soon after you got out of St. Mary's, or, you were telling me about this kind of 2-year experience you had with this like transition with the HR and all this other stuff. How did you, what was like, yes, I'm doing it?
Yeah. And definitely not one thing, right? It never is one thing. It comes back to when I was a little girl, like child. I can't remember tons from like vivid memories like this, but I remember this. My dad was putting me to sleep one night and we were reading a story or something like that. And he closed the book. I was like, all right, time for bed. And something about the book or a conversation made me stop and look and say to him, like, Dad, I don't want to grow up. And he was like, well, why? And I was like, well, like, adults just seem unhappy. Like, in a kid's mind, right? I said, well, it had a conversation at that point. It was like, life is ups and downs, right? And that stuck with me, Alex. And so when I then say life is too short to do work you don't care about, for me, it is rooted in that early understanding of like life is short, right? And in a child's mind, not in the way that I know it now as an adult, but thinking about it from the perspective of, man, what if we could help people spend their careers, which is like 80% or more of our lives, right? If you're an entrepreneur, it's definitely more. Like it's a big chunk of our lives. So for me, it felt like, okay, if that's the space, we know people spend tons of time there. I was hearing on the radio so much when it used to be that, you were driving again pre-pandemic, oh, it's Monday. I was like, who wants that energy? Right. And it's Friday. Yay, weekend. It's like, oh, okay, this feels like a slippery slope here and that we're just wishing life away. And again, what's happening between Monday through Friday? Well, not for everybody, but it's work. What if people could do work that fueled them, that energized them, and gave them the economic means of whatever success looks like from that perspective? Like, what if? How might the world be a better place if that was the case? And so that it was from that of, okay, I've had some awakenings myself. If I fast forward now to when I was with the tech company, having those kind of exploratory conversations with my mentor at the time, and it did not jump right to EnPoint, right? So I joined a recruitment firm for a period of time to experience something different, did some recruitment in the tech space, did some marketing for them, helping them tell their story. And on the side, we kind of incubated what would become EnPoint within this company. But it was like, okay, let's just experiment and figure out, I've got this idea. I've got this thing that I'm really passionate about. At the time, Nova Scotia was losing many graduates to other parts of Canada. And international student immigration was a big priority for the province. And so it was this interesting combination of things that then led to, okay, let's have some conversations with employers. Let's have some conversations with recent graduates. Let's have conversations with soon-to-be graduates and try to understand where the gaps are when it comes to the right people being in the right jobs, being in the right companies. And what it fundamentally came to in I'm talking thousands of conversations, Alex.
It's a lot.
Right? Like I would ask what I thought was a very simple question. Why engineering? The answer I got so many times was, well, dad was an engineer, brother was an engineer, uncle was an engineer. Okay. Why industrial engineering? Well, I like solving problems. Why? Right? So we played that game, right? Finally getting to the core of it. And what it, for me, illuminated in many of these conversations was, okay, people aren't aware of and or aren't tapping into, what do I actually care about? What am I passionate about? What am I good at? What do I want to do in this world? Or they had a sense of this, but they had no idea how to connect that to reality, to the job market, to career building. And so it was like, I think I could help people figure that out. Now, how do we help people figure it out? And that's where mentorship became in. Mentorship is the vehicle we've been using to help people figure out how to build meaningful careers. It's confidence, it's skill, it's network connection, right? So long-winded answer,
no,
but it's a journey.
No, that's interesting. That's interesting. Well, you mentioned a little bit about kind of being incubated and things like that. What was kind of like the hardest thing about starting your company? Like, did you just like add water and mix and poof, there you go? Or like, what was there anything like that? Like, what was the hardest part about getting kind of started with creating the company? And was it always called EnPoint from the beginning, or?
Yeah. Okay. Man, oh man, the things you learn, right, when you go through the process. I spent so much time thinking about the name, like inordinate amounts of stress and pain.
Okay.
That's like nobody else really cares but you, but it had to matter, right? So it came from just a teen time backstory. I used to dance, and like from the time I was 3 years old till 18, right? And I left Bermuda, and when you learn to dance on point, like it's a feat, right? That you need to build up the strength and the muscles and the grit. There are tears involved.
No, my mother was a ballet dancer for a while, so I've seen the point shoes. I don't even know how you can do that.
It's a certain kind of torture, but we inflict it on ourselves. So
it looks beautiful. Well,
there you go, right? But it takes strength to do that. But when you finally you rise up onto the tip of your toes, that feeling, Alex, that's what I wanted to help people feel when it came to finding their sweet spot. And then also that Urban Dictionary, like on point, perfect, right?
Yeah.
But I mentioned that story because it was a series of like little things that at the time didn't feel little. And, I can look back on it now and I grin. I'm like, my God, that was ridiculous, right? Like there are much bigger things to focus on. Again, at the time that I started, the incubators that actually exist now weren't as prevalent. And we didn't really fit at the early stages because I didn't know what our model was going to be, right? So getting in my own head, like, is something that I think we all do. As female entrepreneurs, as a female who then decided I was going to have a tech component to my business. My background is not technology. I'm not a software developer at all. You don't want me in that.
Fair enough.
Right. So there are all these kind of the internal battles that,
Mhm.
again, I'm very fortunate, thankfully, that I had good relationships with mentors that I could be like, all right, look, here's what I'm getting hung up on. I just need you to call me out my BS. Like, but I'm stuck. I am stuck. Right. But the bigger things are things that I think every entrepreneur goes through. And it's not the starting.
Mhm.
It's the reinventing. It's the moving with your market as your market is evolving, and trying to do that actually before, right?
Mm.
Trying to be that almost having the crystal ball when none of us do,
Mhm.
right? And trying to go, okay, like, where do we think this is going? So there's a lot of interesting things that are happening in the workforce and career development domains right now. A lot of our clients we work with, we've done a lot of work with post-secondary institutions, supporting international students. There's a lot of change and turmoil in that space right now. So, it's paying attention to what's happening and then figuring out, okay, what's the space we can still occupy and we can still have an impact in, and who are those people? One of the things I was doing, and I spent an inordinate amount of time early on, was trying to convince organizations that mentorship actually was part of the solution to their people problems, to their student success, their student retention, their student or their alumni engagement problems, or their participant placement rates at not-for-profits. I was like, you know what? It's not my job to convince you. We work with organizations who already believe in the power of mentorship, but who know they don't have the time or the resources, the expertise to do it in-house. We tag team together, we collaborate, and it's really about helping that organization turn up the volume on their work. So that was a big one. It took time though to figure that out. Right.
Yeah. I can appreciate that some of our other work that we do is around inclusive innovation and, trying to create space for more inclusion for women and underrepresented founders and, trying to do all of those things. And we talk a lot about following the energy.
Yeah.
Like you can spend a lot of time convincing people. I mean, you do have to do like a knowledge sharing and bringing up the general knowledge. But if you want to make some progress and mobilize and get some things done, like, keep sharing and doing the other things, but getting things done. You sometimes have to say, okay, who are we do this a lot of our work with some of our MIT REAP kind of thinking. It's like, who are the stakeholders who are around? Who has the energy, the motivation, the urgency, the influence that can help move this agenda forward? Because you're right. If you're constantly trying to bring every single person along, then you get worn down and you can't bring anybody along. So yeah.
Lessons.
Yeah. Right. Lessons. Okay. That's a really good lesson. That's a really good lesson. What's something that's been super rewarding as you've created this business? Like, I know you talked a lot about international, and there's all kinds of stuff happening with international students right now, but what's something that's been really rewarding in this business?
Yeah. My answer's not going to surprise you, I don't think. It is hearing the stories, seeing the stories, observing the stories of the individuals who have had those aha moments because of participating in mentorship, and or the organizations who are learning from bringing it to their people. We were on a call, it's a couple months ago now, and with an organization we've been working with for about 3 years. And again, their initiative is specifically supporting women in their organization and progressing within the organization professionally and personally. And it was smiles all around, Alex, like, and genuine smiles. And to hear the people talk about the real impacts of what mentorship has done for them, they feel like they belong. They've been given different opportunities. They've had access to different networks within. This is a large company we've been working with. They have somebody who they feel like they can actually talk to, who they never would have connected with otherwise. And you see it, you feel it. There have been some amazing, real transformative stories, even in the work we've done with international students, where, mentor and mentee become friends. There's an example of a pair that the mentor actually went so far as to help this individual bring her 2 daughters here from Lebanon and work towards her own immigration. And so it's real. It's just real. Right. And so I'm glad that I get to be a very small part of helping people do what it is that they need to do for their own self. Right. And we will never know the ripple effects that this creates. But that is why we do what we do. That is why we celebrate National Mentorship Month. And we want to encourage everybody to participate in mentorship in some way, shape, or form. Because you don't know what you don't know. Right.
Well, I think you, as you were talking, made me think about something, and I love the stories that you were sharing. And I think right now we've seen it in our own work, and we have connector events and things like this. We mostly work online, but we try to have some things in person. But even with our virtual stuff, what we notice are the people are really craving connection
Mhm.
and talking to real people, even if it's online or just for a few minutes or just. And I think, I embrace AI. I love, my Copilot, and I love my Chat GPT. I love all those things, and they can tell you all kinds of things.
Yep.
But I think the mentorship from a human, hopefully at least for now,
Yeah.
I think that's something that people are really craving, and having someone who can help them kind of navigate through all the turmoil and the things and the whatever that's happening,
Mhm.
and provide a bit of a filter, because there's just
Mhm.
so much information out there. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I really see the benefit of that. Um, I think, we talked a little bit, and, the Start Now incubator, we're focused on helping diverse intersectional women, whether they're rural women, women in the North, BIPOC women, like all kinds of women, access opportunities to improve their mentorship skills and hopefully start and grow businesses.
Yeah.
What are some things you think maybe that our audience should
Mm.
know about?
Love it. And in terms of, I think my first one, mentorship is for everybody, for all of us. Mentor, mentee, we probably have been in both of those roles at different times in our career. There are benefits from both, right? And the benefits don't just translate and show up in professional life, Alex.
Mhm.
They show up in all parts of our lives, right? So my first is put yourself out there.
Mm.
Go find an opportunity where you can learn with somebody. Be both a mentor and a mentee at some point in your career, many times in your career.
Mhm.
For my fellow female entrepreneurs, it can be really lonely. You know that already. Having a mentor takes some of that alone away. So I would strongly encourage you, find somebody who you connect with on one piece, but is different enough from you that can challenge you appropriately, and help you access the things, the confidence, the skills, and the people that you need. And don't stop. Like rinse and repeat. Keep
Mhm.
doing, right. Like lifelong learning is a real thing, and fundamentally, then, if you're in anywhere in Canada and you're paying attention to this podcast, come join us for some of the activations we're going to be doing together later this month and
That's
in
right.
February.
That's right. That's right. Thank you for the plug. Thank you for the plug. Yes, we're going to be doing some amazing work with EnPoint to have some virtual networking and some in person. So if anyone's coming to our Radiant Voices, which will be February 22nd, you can join us, and we'll have some mentoring events there so people can get a feel from it. Not too intimidating. Good way to kind of experience some of that. So,
Mhm.
and if people want to know more about you or EnPoint, what's the best way that they can connect with you?
Yep. Two things, getonpoint.com. And it's just, this is the branding lesson, folks. It's EnPoint, the dancing coming in.
Yeah.
I'm also on LinkedIn and not hard to find.
Yes. Yes. It's good you said the EN point, because when I type it really quickly, it always goes to end point. And I'm like, no, it's not the end point. It's on point, on point. So
Branding lessons, Alex.
yeah. And I didn't think about the ballet thing, but now that I've got that in my mind. Yeah. And also, I'll thank our listeners today. Please like and subscribe to our podcast. You can find more about the Start Now Incubator and our upcoming programs and our mentorship stuff that'll be happening soon at startnowincubator.ca, or you can also check out our website, onsidenow.ca. So thanks very much, and we look forward to seeing you guys next time.
You've been listening to a Podstarter production.